Opium and Good Neighbors, how Solovyov justifies the current war through a rewritten history of Britain and Europe, the silence of the Kremlin and the noise of television, how Russian propaganda explains the negotiations of the century. The latest episode of 60 Minutes once again demonstrates how Russian state television is turning real diplomatic events into a tool for internal mobilization and psychological pressure on its audience. This time, the subject of the interpretation is the nighttime talks in the Kremlin between Vladimir Putin and two representatives of the Donald Trump administration, Steve Witkow and Jared Kushner. Despite the almost complete lack of information on the outcome of the meeting, Skabeeva constructs a coherent political narrative around it. 1. Europe and Ukraine are relegated to the periphery of the process. 2. Ukraine's fate is being decided in Moscow and Washington. 3. Compromise is impossible due to the fault of Kyiv and the EU. 4. Russia retains control, and the US is forced to heed its terms. 1. 5 hours of silence, transforming the lack of results into a show of force. The broadcast's main focus is secrecy. The Kremlin is not revealing details, the negotiations are classified, and American emissaries are not answering questions. What would be seen as a lack of progress in normal diplomacy is reinterpreted by Russian propaganda as confirmation of the Kremlin's lofty status. Ukraine's fate is being decided here, not in Kyiv and not in Brussels. The very secrecy of the interaction is presented as proof of seriousness and high stakes. This is an important detail. When the content is unknown, it can be filled with any convenient interpretation. And this is a truly important signal. Ukraine is not represented at these negotiations. President Zelensky was in Ireland yesterday, and before that, he spent 2 weeks in Paris and other European capitals, trying to push through changes to the original 28-point peace plan supported by the United States. Washington has also noticed the destructive role of Kyiv and Brussels. In an interview with Fox News, US Secretary of State Rubio stated that Europe is incapable of resolving conflicts. The main obstacle to peace is Kyiv's refusal to withdraw its troops from Russian territory. Right now, the dispute is essentially over a strip approximately 30 to 50 kilometers wide in the remaining 20% of the Donetsk region. And we are trying, and I think we have made some progress, to understand what Ukraine might agree to in order to receive security guarantees for the future. Some believe that US policy should be to continue funding Ukraine in unlimited amounts for as long as the war lasts. That's unrealistic. That's not true. And that's not going to happen. 2. Ukraine is a non-participant. Europe is a saboteur, the architecture of exclusion. The second structural element of the narrative is the demonstrative exclusion of Ukraine from the negotiation process. Skabeeva emphasizes, Zelensky is in Ireland and Paris. The Ukrainian delegation is awaiting signals with hope, but no one will account for them. This creates the image of a country that has lost its agency. In this logic, the EU takes the place of the destroyer of the peace plan. Europe is accused of slowing down negotiations, being unable to resolve conflicts, failing to understand reality, working against US plans. This is a highly visible ploy. It simultaneously undermines trust in European diplomacy and reinforces the thesis of a new world order, where Washington remains the main negotiator, forced to negotiate with Moscow. 3. Shifting responsibility to Kyiv. The main obstacle is the refusal to leave. The American sources cited by Skabeeva are presented through a selection of advantageous phrases. In particular, the retort is, the main problem is Ukraine's unwillingness to withdraw its troops from Russian territory. Russian TV uses this formulation as evidence that the US is tired of supporting Kyiv. The West is beginning to recognize Russian territorial claims. Ukraine is standing in the way of a peace initiative. The argument is based on a distortion. The dispute is over a 30 to 50-kilometer strip, despite the fact that this is internationally recognized Ukrainian territory. This creates the impression that Kyiv is hindering peace, while Moscow is offering a rational solution. 4. Demonstrating American fatigue, corruption as a universal explanation. Another important element is the accusations against the Ukrainian government. The program actively cites Trump's statements about cash and stolen billions. The goal is obvious: to undermine trust in the Ukrainian leadership, to explain Western fatigue, to prepare the audience for the idea that the US is ready to put pressure on Kyiv. This narrative is important for Russian propaganda. It demonstrates that supporting Ukraine was supposedly a mistake, and further assistance is pointless. 5. Interpretation of leaks. Russia isn't giving anything